a trim agency over in Fat Village. We're a startup studio operating out of the back of General Provision co-working space over there. So gotta shout out my place of work real quick before I get started. So I'm gonna dive right in. A couple disclaimers before I do. First off, I'm dealing with like total imposter syndrome right now because I'm still like very much a student of everything I'm going to be talking about. So it feels weird being up here, you know, having any sort of authority on this stuff. So take it for what it's worth. Also, the last thing I want to do is come across as like preachy. So this is all anecdotal stuff that has had a really big impact in my life, and so I want to share it with you guys. That being said, this whole presentation has like little to nothing to do with what I do vocationally for work. So if you were expecting like some design stuff, I apologize in advance. It's not at all what this is going to be about. But I just, you know, I mean, the topic is fantasy. And when Vanessa first filled me in on what the subject was going to be for this month, I was kind of, you know, scratching my head. Trying to figure out how to work that into what I do for a living. It just kind of felt like square peg, round hole. I didn't want to get up here and talk about virtual reality or augmented reality or any of these things that we're on the cusp of in my field because I haven't touched them enough to really offer a whole lot. But after giving it some thought, I realized that fantasy has a big role in my day-to-day life, and the vehicle for that is guided meditation and visualization. These are things that I've been practicing for the past year and a half, almost daily, at least 5 days a week. Saturday, sometimes, you know, stuff falls through the cracks, but definitely Sunday evenings to prepare for the week ahead. And those things have been the catalyst for, you know, finding purpose and direction in my life. So I want to talk about a few of those exercises, but I want to digress for a second before I do, because I realize that I've probably already lost a lot of you just because of these words I'm using, like guided meditation and visualization, and it's all kind of hooey-gooey and new age and ethereal and a little weird depending on your vantage point, and I totally get that. So I want to share with you how I arrived at these practices first, because I very much had that same reaction when these things came on my radar. And I worked past that, and I've learned to love these practices. So it all started with a little drink called bulletproof coffee. I don't know. I don't have enough time to talk in depth about this stuff, but Google it. Watch the viral YouTube video, like spoofing it right now. It's hysterical. So started drinking this stuff a while back. It's great. Made me feel good. Helped me like lose weight and lean out. So totally like utilitarian. This stuff's awesome. Sharp mentally, loving it. That led to checking out the Bulletproof podcast. I consumed like all that content. And initially I was only listening to the stuff related to like fitness and performing well and looking good and all this like surface level stuff. And I ran out of those. I listened to all of them. And I arrived at this one eventually. It's this guy, Hal Elrod. He's an author, entrepreneur. Long story short, he's on the podcast selling his book, and it was all about like how to be happier and all this stuff. And his book is called The Miracle Morning. Again, I only have the time to like touch on that briefly, but guided meditation and visualization are components of his Miracle Morning that he talks about in the book. There have been sequels since. And this Hal Elrod guy is just rifling all this staggering stuff off. You know, he increased his income twofold in the course of 2 months. You know, he's attributing it to these miracle mornings that he's been doing. And again, components of those mornings are meditation and visualization. And I'm like, well, that's impressive. He didn't get a raise, he didn't change companies or anything. He's just a sales guy, and he upped his performance so much that in 2 months he doubled his income. So I'm just like staggered by that. This guy was not a marathon runner. Decides he wants to run an ultra marathon. In 5 months, he does it. You know, trains and runs a freaking ultra marathon. So I'm like, okay, what's going on here? This is like, I want in. You know, like, tell me what I need to do. This sounds awesome. So again, meditation, visualizations. There's his miracle morning is like a 5-part thing. 2 of them are these 2 things. So he goes on to name drop all these people that are meditating regularly, if not daily. Oprah Winfrey, Russell Simmons, Ariana Huffington, Steve Jobs, We've all heard of this guy. You know, Ellen DeGeneres, just, and the list goes on and on. There's hundreds of uber successful people that practice this stuff regularly. And I'm like, man, I want to achieve that level of success. I want to have that positive impact on the world that all these people have. And I know that like causation and correlation are different things, of course, but there's a common thread here that I was kind of observing. So this is what really put a bow on the whole thing. I don't know if this is big enough, but it says, your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development. And this is a Jim Rohn quote that Hal mentioned in the podcast. And that's kind of when it clicked. And again, it just put a bow on the whole thing. And I was like, all right, I know what I need to do. If I want to ever hope to be as impactful as Oprah Winfrey and Steve Jobs and all these people, I need to work on my personal development. All that to say that I approached this from like a completely utilitarian standpoint. You know, it wasn't, again, initially I was kind of off-put, but I'm a skeptic by nature. I play devil's advocate with people and myself all the time. I love challenging my paradigm. And so when I was hearing stuff like meditation and visualization and daily intention and affirmation and all this stuff that he's rifling off, I was like defense mechanisms were just flying up. But man, the proof's in the pudding with a lot of these people, and so I worked past that, and now it's a big part of my life. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and explain what fantasy has to do with all that. So there's an app called Omvana. I'm hearing about a new one now called like Headspace, but Omvana is a web app. It's all guided meditations. So I want to touch on that for a second. So again, I'm hearing meditation for the first time. Well, not the first time, but I'm completely unfamiliar with it. As far as I knew, you just kind of like sat in a room silently and tried to think about nothing. And that is a thing. People do that. But like monks that literally spend their entire lives doing that can really only truly clear their mind completely for like 15 seconds. You know, and it's like I don't have a lifetime to devote to being able to clear my mind completely for 15 seconds. So guided meditation is great for me personally because I'm ADD. I'm all over the place. You know, so having the voice and having people walk me through this stuff was super helpful. So I found Omvana, learned a little bit about the creator of Omvana, Vishen Lakhiani. This guy's awesome. Again, I could talk for 20 minutes about this dude. Google the guy. Side note, all this stuff that I'm mentioning, I have a slide at the end of this thing with links to all this stuff if you're at all interested and you want to check it out. So I don't know if we email these things out after the fact, but come talk to me after. I'll make sure you get this thing if you want it. Vishen started a company called Mind Valley. They're, long story short, a publication company, education company, all about this stuff, right? Personal development, self-improvement. They're awesome. Look into them as well, I encourage you. It's a phenomenal company. Their culture is incredible. So Vishen has this exercise and a meditation that accompanies it called the 3 most important questions. And those questions are, what do you want to experience in this lifetime? How do you want to grow? And how do you want to contribute? What do you want to give back after that's all said and done? So when you're answering these questions, he encourages you to focus on end goals versus means goals. End goals are the lofty, awesome stuff that you want to do. Means goals are the steps along the way. And those are very important too, but that's a whole different talk. For this exercise, you have to focus on the end goals. And this is where fantasy starts to come into play because you need to imagine that money is not an object, that time is of no concern, in order to really hone in on what it is that you want to do with your life. So, end goals versus mean goals. End goals are completely driven by fantasy. Before I move on to the second part, to talk about those questions a little further. So, what you want to experience, that could be things like, personally, I want to build a company that creates a lot of jobs and employs a lot of talented people, and then sell that and do it all over again. I'm very interested in like the serial entrepreneur thing. That's something I aspire to. That's something that I want to experience in my life while I'm here. travel, do you want to get married? Do you want to have children? Do you want to adopt children? Any component of the human experience, that's what you're thinking about when you're answering that first question of what do you want to experience? How do you want to grow? Like what traits do you want to add to your character? For me personally, like I'm an outgoing, outspoken guy. I have a pretty strong personality. I have a lot of opinions about things, so, and unfortunately, that sometimes leads to like butting heads with people, and that's something that I would work with a lot, like how can I be well received and, not step on people's toes and be compassionate. So those are things that I'm trying to add to my character regularly. And then finally, how do you want to give back? Like after it's all said and done, once you've experienced all those awesome things that you think about in that first question, how are you going to give back? Are you going to donate to charities? You're going to donate your time? What does that look like for you? So those are the three questions. Again, be lofty with this. I told myself I was going to try to avoid using the word fantasize because it sounds a little weird, but fantasize, like a great way to be able to do this and focus on end goals is imagine that this stuff is being given to you as a gift or it's something that you want. Don't worry about how you're going to get the money to do the thing you want to do. Just think about what that thing looks like. So, 6-phase meditation, and this is what's written on the icebreakers here. So, again, like the Miracle Morning, there's a few components of this thing. Two of them, though, are, one of the two that I'm going to talk about is the 3-year visualization. And this is awesome. So, he starts it off by saying that people will overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 3. And that's just kind of in our nature. So, he asks the listener, as he's guiding you through this meditation, to kind of take a 3-year stance and think about your future self and your future life 3 years out and where you want to be. So you're thinking about your future self. What does your career look like? What do your finances look like? What does your love life look like? What are you doing for fun? Who are your friends? What do you do with your friends? How often are you spending time with your family? Just think about all those things 3 years out. And what you're doing here is, again, it goes back to fantasy. You're kind of envisioning your future self. And what I like to do when I'm thinking about myself at that stage in life is just kind of envision this person as a superhero, and just like everything that I'm good at, amplified, and minus all the things that I suck at, and just kind of put this version of yourself on a pedestal and be inspired by it, and let the future self be kind of a superhero, which again goes back to fantasy. The second part of the 6-phase meditation that I want to talk about is daily intention, and it comes right after the portion of the meditation devoted to the 3-year thing. The daily intention just asks you, after you've spent that time thinking about the 3 years, and man, I can't tell you guys how good it feels to get to do that. If you really do indulge fantasy and be lofty with this stuff and picture this awesome future for yourself, it's intoxicating. It's so great. So after that, he says, all right, so what does today look like if you want to achieve those things or something greater? What, envision. I do these in the evening before bed, so I'm thinking about the next day. If you do them in the morning, you can think about the day that's ahead of you, but, envision like an awesome cup of coffee in the morning, a pleasant commute to work, road rage free, like a nice day at work. What does that look like? What are you doing for lunch? What are you doing in the evening? Or if you're working on a passion project, are you devoting some time to that in the evening once you're off your full-time job? Are you hanging out with loved ones or friends? Are you reading a book, watching a show? Just think about that perfect day and how it's going to contribute to that 3-year plan that you're kind of starting to set in place. This is what you're doing, right? You're envisioning your perfect day unfolding. So I'm going to try to kind of put a bow on this whole thing. One thing I want to really stress is that fantasy is paramount to all this stuff. You have to indulge it in order for these meditations and visualizations to reach their full potential, So suspend reality for a bit and just kind of dive head first into this stuff and enjoy it. I can't stress this enough, man. Like, no one accidentally overachieves, right? If you look at what Elon Musk is doing right now, the exponential growth Tesla's experiencing, all the space exploration stuff, that's not on accident, man. And I know it's so cheesy, but that poster that was on like our PE class room wall that said, shoot for the moon. So if you miss, you land amongst the stars. That whole thing. I mean, it's cringeworthy. It's so cheesy, but man, like it's true. And you're not gonna, if you're aiming for the stars, you're not gonna, accidentally go further and arrive at the moon. So be lofty, and that's scalable. Obviously, like maybe you just want to own a little like brick and mortar mom and pop thing. Cool. Like we're in this age of like 10x returns and all this stuff. Maybe it's a lifestyle business. That's freaking awesome. And like whatever it is. I would just encourage you to push it a little further, that like indulge fantasy, be lofty in what you want to achieve, because you're not gonna exceed that accidentally. So to summarize, fantasy plays a role in my life every day through these vehicles, guided meditation and visualization, and through those, I've been able to get close to finding purpose and direction for my life. So, again, I have sources at the end of this thing, resources, anything you guys, if any of this piques your interest, it's all here. So, thank you so much for your time. This is
I want to try something different that our buddy Mark Buss from Vancouver mentioned he does in one of his chapters. I want you guys to turn to somebody to your left or right, probably somebody you don't know, just for like a minute or two. Just talk about what the heck just happened.